Chapter 1. A Royal Beginning. The birth of a prince. A life of destiny begins. The air was cold, crisp, and filled with excitement. It was the 14th of November, 1948. In London, the bells of Westminster Abbey rang loudly. Crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace, their breath forming clouds in the chilly air. Everyone waited for news. Finally, it came. A prince had been born, the future King of England. Inside the palace, there was joy. Elizabeth, the young princess who would one day become queen, had given birth to her first child, a boy. He was named Charles Philip Arthur George. His proud father, Prince Philip, smiled as he held his tiny son for the first time. Outside, the crowds cheered. Little did they know how much this baby's life would shape the future. From the very beginning, Charles's life was extraordinary. While most babies slept in simple nurseries, Charles's first room was a grand one in Buckingham Palace. His cradle was fit for a prince, decorated with fine lace and silk. His world was surrounded by wealth and beauty. But even as a baby, Charles's life came with expectations. One day, he would be king. As Charles grew, so did the attention on him. The world was watching. Newspapers printed stories about the royal baby. People sent gifts and letters from every corner of the British Empire. He was more than a child. To many, he was a symbol of hope for the future. But for Charles, life was not always easy. His parents loved him deeply, but they were busy. His mother, Princess Elizabeth, had many royal duties. His father, Prince Philip, wanted his son to grow up strong and independent. Philip often said, "He must be ready for the world. Life as a royal is not simple." These words would stay with Charles for the rest of his life. When Charles was just 3 years old, everything changed. In 1952, his grandfather, King George VI, passed away. Charles's mother became Queen Elizabeth II. Suddenly, Charles was not just a little boy anymore. He was the heir to the throne. The pressure on him grew. He was now the future King of England. At home, Charles had a loving but strict upbringing. Nannies looked after him while his parents worked. His favorite nanny, Mabel Anderson, was kind and caring. She often told him bedtime stories and sang him lullabies. Charles loved these quiet moments. They made him feel safe. But the world outside the nursery was not so gentle. Even as a young boy, Charles had to learn how to behave like a royal. He attended formal events, dressed in smart suits. People bowed to him and called him, "Your Royal Highness." At times, it was overwhelming. Charles later said that he often felt lonely. "It is not easy being a prince," he would confess. Despite the challenges, Charles was curious and bright. He loved nature and animals. In the palace gardens, he spent hours watching birds and insects. His governess, Catherine Peebles, noticed his love for the outdoors. She encouraged him to explore and learn. "The world is full of wonders, Charles," she told him. Never stop asking questions. Charles also loved art and music. He enjoyed painting pictures of the countryside and listening to classical music. These quiet hobbies gave him comfort in a life that was often noisy and demanding. One special moment from Charles's childhood happened on his 5th birthday. It was a sunny November day, rare for autumn in England. His family organized a small party in the palace garden. There was a big cake, decorated with flowers made of sugar. Charles's eyes lit up when he saw it. For a few hours, he was just a little boy, laughing and playing with his cousins. It was a day he would never forget. But soon, duty called again. Even as a young child, Charles was taught about his future role. Tutors explained to him the history of the monarchy. They told him stories of great kings and queens from the past. "One day, you will lead this nation," they said. Charles listened carefully, though the idea of being king felt distant and overwhelming. When Charles turned 6, he began attending school. This was unusual for a royal child. Most princes were educated at home by private tutors, but Prince Philip insisted that Charles should go to school like other children. He must understand the world outside the palace, Philip said firmly. Charles's first school was Hill House, a small school in London. On his first day, he was nervous. Reporters waited outside, cameras flashing. Charles held tightly to his mother's hand. Inside the classroom, he sat quietly, listening to his teacher. The other children were curious about the shy boy who would one day be king. Slowly, Charles made friends and began to enjoy school. At home, life continued to be a mix of love and responsibility. Queen Elizabeth spent as much time as she could with her son, though her royal duties often kept her busy. She read him bedtime stories when she was home and taught him about kindness and respect. A good leader must always care for their people, she told him. These lessons stayed with Charles for the rest of his life. As Charles grew older, he began to understand more about the world. He learned that being a prince was not just about wearing crowns and attending parties. It was about service, duty, and sacrifice. His parents reminded him of this often. "To whom much is given, much is expected," his mother would say. Charles felt the weight of these words, even as a child. But there were also moments of joy. On summer holidays, the royal family traveled to Balmoral Castle in Scotland. Charles loved the fresh air, the mountains, and the quiet of the countryside. He spent hours fishing in the rivers and walking through the forests. These trips gave him a deep love for nature and a connection to the land. By the time Charles was 8 years old, he was beginning to understand his destiny. He was still a young boy, full of dreams and questions, but he also knew that his life was not like others. He was a prince, and one day he would be king. Chapter 2. Growing Up Royal. A little boy in a big world. Charles was no ordinary boy. He was the first son of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. His life was different from the start. He lived in palaces, traveled in grand carriages, and met important people. But even with all the luxury, Charles had challenges too. Being a royal was not always easy. From a young age, Charles realized he was always being watched. Wherever he went, cameras followed. People waved and smiled at him, expecting him to smile back. At first, Charles found it exciting. He liked the attention. But as he grew older, he began to feel the pressure. Everyone had high expectations. He had to be perfect, always polite, always calm, always smiling. Even at home, Charles's life was not like other children's. He lived in Buckingham Palace, a place full of history and rules. The palace was enormous, with hundreds of rooms and long, echoing hallways. Charles loved the gardens best. There he could play and explore. He spent hours running across the grass, chasing butterflies and birds. The flowers smelled sweet, and the trees gave him shade. In the gardens, he felt free. Inside the palace, life was very different. Charles was surrounded by staff. Nannies, maids, cooks, and guards were always nearby. His favorite nanny, Mabel Anderson, took care of him every day. She was kind and gentle. She read him stories and made him laugh. "You're not just a prince," she would whisper to him. "You're a little boy, too." Charles's parents loved him deeply, but they were often busy. Queen Elizabeth became queen when Charles was only 3 years old. Her new role meant she had many responsibilities. She traveled to faraway countries, attended important meetings, and made speeches to the nation. Charles missed her when she was away. Sometimes he would stand at the window and watch her car drive off. "When will Mummy come back?" he would ask. It made his heart ache. Prince Philip also had many duties. He believed Charles needed to be strong. "Life as a royal is tough," Philip often said. He wanted his son to grow up ready for the challenges ahead. He encouraged Charles to be brave and independent. But Charles was sensitive. He wasn't like his father, who was confident and energetic. Charles liked quiet moments and gentle encouragement. This sometimes created tension between them. At school, Charles faced more challenges. He attended Hill House School in London, and later Cheam School in the countryside. It was hard for him to fit in. The other boys knew he was a prince. Some were jealous, and others teased him. They thought he was different. Charles tried to join in their games, but he often felt left out. He later said that school was one of the loneliest times of his life. Despite this, Charles worked hard. He loved reading and learning about history. He enjoyed drawing pictures of castles and kings. His teachers noticed he was thoughtful and creative. "Charles has a kind heart," one teacher said. But being a royal meant more than just doing well in school. He had to prepare for his future role. From a young age, Charles learned about his family's place in history. His tutors told him stories of great kings and queens, Henry VIII, Elizabeth I, and Victoria. They explained the importance of the monarchy. "The royal family represents the country," they said. "You will one day lead this nation. You must be ready." Charles took these lessons seriously. He listened carefully, even though he didn't fully understand what it all meant. The idea of being king felt far away. For now, he was just a boy trying to understand his world. One of Charles's favorite activities was visiting Balmoral Castle in Scotland. Every summer, the royal family spent time there. Balmoral was very different from Buckingham Palace. It was surrounded by mountains, rivers, and forests. Charles loved the fresh air and the feeling of freedom. He explored the woods, climbed hills, and fished in the clear streams. In nature, Charles felt happy and peaceful. At Balmoral, he also spent time with his grandparents. The Queen Mother, his grandmother, was especially close to him. She was warm and caring. She told him stories about her own childhood and gave him advice. "Be true to yourself, Charles," she said. "The world will expect much of you, but never lose your heart." Her words stayed with him for years. As Charles grew older, he began to take on more royal duties. At the age of 8, he attended his first official engagement. He accompanied his parents to an event in London. Charles wore a small suit and tie. He looked nervous, but excited. People clapped and cheered when they saw him. He smiled shyly and waved. It was a glimpse of the future, a life in the public eye. But the public wasn't always kind. Newspapers and magazines often wrote about Charles. They commented on his clothes, his behavior, even his looks. Some articles praised him, but others were critical. Charles sometimes read these stories and felt hurt. He wanted to be understood, not judged. Despite the challenges, Charles found joy in small moments. He loved music and learned to play the cello. He enjoyed painting and spent hours capturing landscapes on paper. These hobbies gave him a sense of calm in a busy, demanding life. One memorable moment from Charles's childhood was his investiture as Prince of Wales. When Charles was 9, his mother officially gave him the title. This ceremony symbolized his role as the future king. Charles stood proudly beside his mother as she placed a special golden badge on his chest. The world was watching. It was a proud but overwhelming day. Charles's childhood was a mix of privilege and pressure. He lived in palaces, wore fine clothes, and traveled to amazing places. But he also felt the heavy weight of responsibility. He knew his life was not his own. It belonged to the people, to the history of his family, and to the future of the monarchy. As Charles grew into a young man, he carried these experiences with him. He had learned about duty, family, and the expectations placed on him. But he had also discovered his love for nature, art, and quiet moments of reflection. These lessons shaped the man he would become. In the next chapter, we will see how Charles stepped further into his role as Prince of Wales. The challenges grew, but so did his determination. A boy in a big world was starting to find his place. Chapter 3. The Making of a Prince. Duty calls, even for a young boy. Charles's education was unlike any other. As the future king, he needed to learn much more than reading, writing, and arithmetic. He needed to understand history, leadership, and the world. From the very beginning, his schooling was carefully planned. Every decision had a purpose. But this path was not easy for Charles. As a little boy, Charles began his lessons at Buckingham Palace. His first teacher was Catherine Peebles, a governess. Miss Peebles was patient and kind. She taught him simple subjects, spelling, numbers, and how to read. Charles loved stories about knights and castles. He listened with wide eyes, imagining himself as a brave hero. But his lessons weren't just about books. Charles was also taught how to behave like a prince. He practiced sitting straight, speaking clearly, and walking with confidence. A prince must always carry himself with dignity, Miss Peebles told him. These lessons were important, but they were strict. Sometimes Charles felt tired. He just wanted to play like other children. When Charles turned 8, his father, Prince Philip, decided it was time for him to go to school. This was unusual for a royal child. Most princes were taught at home by private tutors, but Philip believed Charles needed to experience the real world. He must mix with other boys, Philip said. He must learn to stand on his own. Charles's first school was Hill House, a small school in London. On his first day, he wore a blazer and tie. He looked nervous but determined. Outside the school, photographers waited, their cameras clicking. Charles walked in with his nanny, trying not to look scared. Inside, the classrooms were simple and noisy. It was nothing like the palace. At Hill House, Charles was treated like any other boy. He sat in rows of desks, raised his hand to answer questions, and played games at recess. But fitting in wasn't easy. The other boys knew he was a prince. Some teased him, calling him Sir in a mocking voice. Charles tried to ignore them, but the teasing hurt. He missed the safety of the palace. After 2 years at Hill House, Charles moved to Cheam School in the countryside. Cheam was much stricter. The school was far from home, so Charles had to live there. This was his first time away from his family. At night, he felt lonely in his cold, shared dormitory. He missed his mother's hugs and the familiar sounds of Buckingham Palace. Life at Cheam was tough. The headmaster believed in discipline. The boys had to wake up early, make their beds perfectly, and follow strict rules. Charles struggled with this new environment. He wasn't as athletic or confident as some of the other boys. Sometimes he felt like he didn't belong. But Charles found comfort in his books. He loved history, especially stories about kings and battles. He enjoyed learning about the British Empire and its traditions. His teachers noticed that he was thoughtful and intelligent. One teacher said, "Charles is a quiet boy, but he has a deep mind." Art became another escape for Charles. He enjoyed painting and drawing, often creating pictures of landscapes and animals. These moments of creativity gave him peace. While the other boys played rough sports, Charles often chose to sketch quietly. It helped him express his feelings in a world that sometimes felt overwhelming. When Charles was 13, his education took another big step. His father decided he should attend Gordonstown, a boarding school in Scotland. Gordonstown was famous for its tough rules and focus on outdoor activities. Prince Philip had gone there himself as a boy and believed it would teach Charles resilience. Charles was not excited about Gordonstown. The school was far from the comforts of home. The winters were cold and the daily schedule was demanding. Students woke up at dawn for runs and cold showers. They were expected to be independent and strong. Philip thought this would build Charles's character, but Charles found it difficult. At Gordonstown, Charles felt isolated. He was shy and sensitive, very different from the confident boys around him. Some students teased him because he was the Prince of Wales. Others ignored him, thinking he was too different to be a friend. Charles later said that his years at Gordonstown were some of the hardest of his life. Despite the challenges, Charles did his best to succeed. He joined activities like drama and music, where he felt more comfortable. He acted in school plays and played the cello in the orchestra. Performing helped him build confidence. For the first time, he felt he could express himself without fear of judgment. The harsh environment of Gordonstown also taught Charles valuable lessons. He learned how to take care of himself. He learned how to stay strong even when things were hard. And he learned the importance of teamwork and leadership. These lessons would stay with him for the rest of his life. One of the most memorable parts of Charles's time at Gordonstown was his Outward Bound experience. This was a program where students went on challenging outdoor adventures. Charles had to hike through forests, climb mountains, and camp in the wilderness. It was physically exhausting, but it taught him resilience. He discovered a deep love for nature during these trips. As Charles grew older, his role as Prince of Wales became more important. When he was 16, he went on his first royal tour. He traveled to Wales and gave a speech in Welsh. This was a big moment for Charles. He was nervous, but he worked hard to prepare. The people of Wales appreciated his effort. It was the beginning of his connection with the country. After Gordonstown, Charles continued his education at Cambridge University. He studied history, archaeology, and anthropology. Cambridge was a new chapter for him. For the first time, he was treated more like a normal young man. He enjoyed his studies and made new friends. He even joined the university's polo team. During his time at Cambridge, Charles also learned more about his royal duties. He attended official events with his mother, representing the royal family. He met leaders, visited communities, and gave speeches. Each experience taught him something new about leadership and responsibility. By the time Charles finished his education, he had grown into a thoughtful young man. He was still shy and sensitive, but he had gained confidence. He had learned to face challenges with determination. He was ready to take on his role as the Prince of Wales. Chapter 4. A Prince in Wales. A Title and a Challenge. The year was 1969. Charles was 20 years old. It was a big moment in his life. He was about to officially become the Prince of Wales. This wasn't just a title, it was a responsibility. It meant he had to represent Wales, understand its people, and honor its traditions. Charles felt the weight of this duty. He wanted to do it right. Before the grand ceremony, Charles had to prepare. He didn't just want to be a figurehead. He wanted to truly connect with the Welsh people. To do this, he decided to learn about their culture and history. He also began studying the Welsh language. It was difficult, but Charles was determined. He knew it was important to show respect for the country he would represent. For a few months, Charles lived in Aberystwyth, a small town in Wales. He attended classes at the university there. His teacher, Dr. Edward Millward, was a passionate Welsh nationalist. He taught Charles not just the language, but also the struggles and pride of the Welsh people. Dr. Millward admired Charles's effort. He worked hard, Dr. Millward later said. He really wanted to understand Wales. Life in Aberystwyth was different for Charles. The town was small and quiet, far from the grandeur of Buckingham Palace. Charles stayed in a modest room and ate simple meals. He walked through the streets like an ordinary student. Some locals were surprised to see the Prince of Wales buying books at the market or stopping for a cup of tea at a cafe. These moments brought him closer to the people. But not everyone welcomed him. At the time, there were tensions in Wales. Some people believed the title Prince of Wales was a reminder of England's control over their country. They didn't want Charles to represent them. Protesters held up signs that said, "Wales is not England." Charles saw these protests. He felt nervous, but also determined. He knew he couldn't please everyone, but he wanted to show that he cared. Finally, the day of the investiture arrived, July 1st, 1969. The ceremony took place at Caernarfon Castle, an ancient fortress in North Wales. The castle was decorated with flags and flowers. Thousands of people came to watch. Many more watched on television. The whole world was paying attention. Charles was nervous. He wore a special outfit, including a long red cape. He looked like a prince from a storybook. As he walked into the castle, he could hear the cheers of the crowd. But he also knew that not everyone there supported him. It was a mix of excitement and tension. The investiture was full of tradition. Queen Elizabeth, his mother, placed a golden crown on his head. She gave him a sword and a ring, symbols of his role as Prince of Wales. Charles knelt before her, promising to serve the people. His voice was steady, but inside, his heart was racing. This was the moment he officially became the Prince of Wales. Then came the most important part. Charles stood to give a speech in Welsh. He had practiced for weeks. His voice was clear and strong as he spoke to the crowd. He thanked them for their welcome and promised to work hard for Wales. Many people were impressed. Speaking in Welsh was a powerful gesture. It showed that Charles had taken the time to learn and respect their culture. After the speech, the crowd cheered. Even some of the protesters softened. They saw that Charles was trying to understand Wales, not just rule over it. For Charles, this moment was a mix of relief and pride. He had faced a challenge and succeeded. The investiture was not just a ceremony. It was a turning point in Charles's life. He had stepped into a new role, one with great responsibility. Being the Prince of Wales wasn't just about wearing a title. It was about serving the people. Charles took this seriously. Over the years, Charles visited Wales often. He attended cultural events, supported Welsh charities, and met with local leaders. He wanted to be more than a distant figure. He wanted to connect with the people. Sometimes it was challenging. The history between Wales and England was complicated. But Charles didn't give up. He continued to show his respect for Welsh traditions. One of Charles's favorite events in Wales was the Eisteddfod, a festival celebrating Welsh poetry, music, and art. He loved seeing the creativity of the people and learning more about their traditions. At these events, he often spoke in Welsh, earning the respect of many. But being the Prince of Wales wasn't always easy. Some people still criticized him, saying he didn't truly understand their struggles. Others felt the monarchy was out of touch. Charles listened to these opinions. He knew he couldn't solve every problem, but he wanted to do his best. Charles's experiences in Wales taught him important lessons. He learned how to handle criticism, how to connect with different cultures, and how to lead with respect. These lessons would help him throughout his life. Looking back, Charles often said that his time in Wales was one of the most meaningful periods of his life. It wasn't just about becoming the Prince of Wales. It was about growing as a person. He faced challenges, worked hard, and earned the respect of many. Chapter 5. A Voice for Nature. Protecting the Earth before it was popular. Charles has always loved nature. As a boy, he spent hours exploring the gardens at Buckingham Palace. He loved the feel of the grass under his feet and the sounds of birds singing in the trees. When he visited Balmoral Castle in Scotland, he felt even closer to the natural world. The rivers, mountains, and forests filled him with wonder. These early experiences shaped Charles's view of the world. He believed the earth was precious and needed protection. As he grew older, this belief became a central part of his life. Long before most people talked about the environment, Charles was speaking out. He saw problems that others ignored. He wanted to make a difference. In the 1970s, Charles began sharing his concerns about the environment. At that time, few people worried about pollution or climate change. Factories filled the air with smoke. Rivers were full of waste. Forests were being cut down. Charles thought this was wrong. He felt people were treating the planet badly. In speeches, he warned about the dangers of pollution. He spoke about the importance of clean water, healthy soil, and fresh air. "We cannot keep taking from the earth without giving back," he said. His words surprised many people. They were not used to hearing a prince talk about such things. Some agreed with him. Others thought he was strange. But Charles didn't let the criticism stop him. He believed in his message. "We must protect nature," he often said, or we will lose it forever. One of Charles's biggest passions was farming. He loved the idea of working with the land, not against it. In 1985, he bought a farm called Highgrove House. There, he started growing food in a natural way. He used no chemicals, only organic methods. At the time, organic farming was rare. People said it was old-fashioned. But Charles believed it was the future. At Highgrove, Charles grew vegetables, fruits, and flowers. He planted hedges and trees to create homes for birds and animals. He worked hard to make the land healthy and full of life. Over time, Highgrove became an example of how farming could help the environment. Charles also cared deeply about trees. He often said, "Trees are the lungs of the earth." He believed planting trees was one of the best ways to protect the planet. Every year, he planted hundreds of them. Sometimes, he even gave speeches while standing beside a young tree he had just planted. "This tree will outlive us all," he would say, "if we care for it." In the 1990s, Charles's environmental work gained more attention. People were starting to see the effects of climate change. Glaciers were melting. Weather was becoming more extreme. Charles's warnings no longer seemed unusual. They seemed important. He spoke at major international meetings, urging world leaders to act. At one event, he told the audience, "The earth is our home. If we destroy it, we destroy ourselves." His words were powerful. Many people admired his passion. But there were still those who doubted him. Charles faced criticism for his ideas. Some people said he was too outspoken for a royal. They thought he should stay quiet about such issues. Others said his plans were unrealistic. Charles listened to these opinions, but he didn't change his beliefs. He felt it was his duty to speak up, even if it wasn't popular. One of Charles's most famous projects was the Prince's Rainforest Project. This program aimed to save the world's rainforests, which were disappearing quickly. Rainforests are vital for the planet. They produce oxygen, store carbon, and provide homes for countless animals. Charles worked with governments and businesses to raise money and awareness. He even made a short film about the rainforests, featuring celebrities and animations of frogs and jaguars. Charles also supported renewable energy. He believed that humans needed to find new ways to power the world, ways that didn't harm the earth. He promoted solar panels, wind turbines, and other green technologies. At his homes, he installed systems to save energy and reduce waste. Highgrove, for example, had a reed bed system to recycle water and solar panels to generate electricity. Over the years, Charles's environmental message became clearer. He believed people had lost their connection to nature. They cared more about money and convenience than about the planet. Charles often said, "We need to live in harmony with the natural world." He encouraged people to think about their choices, what they ate, what they bought, and how they lived. One of Charles's proudest achievements was the creation of Poundbury, a town built on his ideas of sustainability. Located in Dorset, Poundbury was designed to be eco-friendly and people-focused. It used less energy and created spaces for nature to thrive. Charles believed it was a model for how towns could be built in the future. In 2007, Charles launched the Prince's May Day Network. This program encouraged businesses to become more sustainable. It asked companies to reduce their carbon footprints and find ways to protect the environment. Thousands of businesses joined, showing that Charles's message was reaching more people. Despite his efforts, Charles knew the fight to protect the planet was far from over. Climate change was accelerating. Forests were still disappearing. Wildlife was still under threat. Charles often said he felt frustrated by the slow pace of progress. But he never gave up. He believed that even small actions could make a big difference. In his speeches, Charles often shared his personal connection to nature. He spoke about the joy of watching bees in a flower garden, the peace of walking through a forest, and the beauty of a sunrise. These moments reminded him why he fought so hard to protect the earth. He wanted future generations to experience the same wonders. Today, many people recognize Charles as a leader in the fight for the environment. He was one of the first public figures to speak out about climate change and sustainability. His ideas, once seen as unusual, are now widely accepted. His work has inspired millions around the world to take action. Before we begin, Chapter 6, a quick note for our listeners. You're currently listening to this audiobook on Woo English. Remember, this content is specially made for Woo English listeners only. If you're hearing it on any other channel, it may be a violation of Woo English's rights. Please ensure you're tuned into the right source to fully enjoy and respect this audiobook journey. Now, let's continue the story. Chapter 6. The Heart of a Prince. A Love Story and Its Trials. Charles was 31 years old when he met Lady Diana Spencer. She was only 19, shy and charming, with a warm smile that lit up the room. Diana came from a noble family, and she had grown up near the royal estates. Their families had known each other for years, but this was the first time Charles saw her differently. She seemed gentle, kind, and full of life. At first, Charles and Diana seemed like a perfect match. He admired her youth and beauty. She admired his sense of duty and his passion for the environment. They began to spend more time together, going on walks, attending events, and talking late into the night. For Diana, it was a dream come true. For Charles, it felt like he had found someone who could understand him. The world quickly noticed their relationship. Photographers followed them everywhere, hoping to capture the perfect shot. Newspapers called Diana the People's Princess even before she married Charles. The public adored her. She was elegant yet approachable, and her natural charm won hearts everywhere. In February 1981, Charles proposed to Diana. He gave her a beautiful sapphire ring surrounded by diamonds. Diana said yes, and the news spread like wildfire. People across the world celebrated. It felt like a fairy tale. On July 29, 1981, Charles and Diana were married. The wedding was grand, like something out of a storybook. Millions of people watched on television as Diana walked down the aisle of St. Paul's Cathedral in her flowing white gown. The train of her dress was 25 feet long. Charles wore a handsome navy uniform, looking every bit the prince. As they exchanged vows, the crowd outside cheered. It was a moment of joy, not just for the couple, but for the whole country. After the wedding, Charles and Diana began their new life together. They traveled the world, representing the royal family. Everywhere they went, crowds gathered to see them. Diana's popularity grew even more. People loved her warmth, her kindness, and the way she connected with everyone, from presidents to children in hospitals. In 1982, Charles and Diana welcomed their first child, Prince William. 2 years later, Prince Harry was born. Charles was overjoyed to become a father. He loved holding his sons, reading them stories, and watching them grow. Family moments at home brought him great happiness. He felt proud to be a father and hoped to teach his sons about duty and kindness. But behind the smiles and the cameras, Charles and Diana's marriage was struggling. They were very different people. Charles was serious, thoughtful, and focused on his work. Diana was lively, emotional, and loved being around people. At first, these differences seemed to complement each other, but over time, they created distance between them. Charles often felt misunderstood. He wanted Diana to share his passions, like protecting the environment and studying history. Diana, however, wanted more of his time and attention. She felt lonely in the royal family, surrounded by rules and traditions. The constant pressure from the media made things even harder. By the late 1980s, their problems became impossible to hide. Stories about their struggles began to appear in newspapers. Charles and Diana tried to keep their family together, especially for the sake of William and Harry. But the tension grew. They spent more time apart, attending events separately and living in different parts of their home. In 1992, Charles and Diana announced their separation. The news shocked the world. People who had once celebrated their fairy tale wedding now wondered what had gone wrong. Charles felt sadness and regret. He wanted to protect his sons from the pain of their parents' struggles. He focused on spending time with William and Harry, teaching them and supporting them. In 1996, Charles and Diana officially divorced. It was a difficult time for both of them. Despite their differences, Charles respected Diana as the mother of his children. He admired her work, especially her efforts to help people in need. Diana continued to visit hospitals, raise awareness about HIV, AIDS, and support charities around the world. Then, tragedy struck. In 1997, Diana died in a car accident in Paris. The news broke the hearts of millions. People all over the world mourned her loss. For Charles, it was a moment of deep sorrow. He traveled to Paris to bring Diana's body home. Despite their differences, he felt a sense of loss that words could not express. Charles's main focus after Diana's death was their sons. William and Harry were devastated. Charles stayed close to them, offering comfort and guidance. He knew they needed him more than ever. He also worked to honor Diana's legacy by supporting some of the causes she cared about. Over time, Charles began to heal. He found new happiness with Camilla Parker Bowles, a woman he had known for many years. In 2005, they were married in a small private ceremony. Camilla became a trusted partner for Charles, sharing his passions and supporting his work. Looking back, Charles often reflected on the lessons he learned from his marriage to Diana. He realized the importance of communication, understanding, and patience. He also learned how to face public criticism and stay focused on his duties. Charles's journey through love and loss shaped him as a person and a leader. His love story with Diana had moments of joy and heartbreak, but it also taught him resilience. Through it all, he remained devoted to his sons, his work, and his vision for the future. Chapter 7. Challenges and Change. The 1990s tested him, but he found his strength. The 1990s were a difficult time for Charles. It was a decade of challenges, both personal and public. His marriage to Diana was falling apart. His role in the royal family was questioned. The media was relentless. But through it all, Charles stayed focused. He found strength in his work, his sons, and his vision for the future. The troubles in Charles's marriage became public in the early 1990s. Newspapers printed stories about their arguments and their distance. Every detail was reported. It felt as if the whole world was watching. Charles and Diana tried to keep up appearances for their sons, William and Harry, but the strain was clear. In 1992, they officially announced their separation. The news shocked the nation. People who had celebrated their wedding now felt disappointed. Some blamed Charles, others blamed Diana. For Charles, it was a painful time. He worried about how this would affect his sons. He wanted to protect them, but he knew he could not shield them from everything. That same year, another disaster struck. Windsor Castle, one of the royal family's most beloved homes, caught fire. The blaze destroyed parts of the historic building. Charles felt deeply saddened. Windsor was more than a home. It was a symbol of history and tradition. Seeing it burn was like losing a piece of the past. The media continued to focus on Charles. His private life became public. Stories about his relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles filled the headlines. Many people criticized him. Some said he had let down the royal family. Charles found this criticism hard to bear, but he did not respond. Instead, he focused on his duties. Charles continued his work as a prince. He attended public events, supported charities, and gave speeches. One of his most important projects was the Prince's Trust, which he had founded years earlier. The trust helped young people gain skills, find jobs, and build their futures. Charles was proud of this work. It gave him purpose during difficult times. In 1994, Charles made headlines again, this time for his honesty. In a television interview, he spoke about his marriage to Diana. He admitted that their relationship had not been perfect. He also acknowledged his love for Camilla. Some people admired his openness, but others were angry. The royal family was traditionally private. This level of honesty was unusual. Charles also faced challenges within the royal family. The public began to question the monarchy's role. Some people felt the royal family was out of touch with modern life. Others thought they cost too much money. These criticisms added pressure to Charles and his family. He knew they had to adapt to stay relevant. Through all of this, Charles found comfort in nature. He spent time at Highgrove, his countryside home. He worked in the gardens, planting trees and flowers. The quiet of the countryside helped him reflect. It reminded him of what was truly important: family, service, and the future of the planet. Charles also focused on his role as a father. William and Harry were growing up fast. Charles wanted to be there for them, especially during this difficult time. He took them on trips, shared his love of nature with them, and taught them about their responsibilities as royals. Despite the challenges, Charles's bond with his sons grew stronger. In 1996, Charles and Diana's divorce was finalized. It was a sad moment, but it brought some relief. Both Charles and Diana could now move forward. They continued to co-parent William and Harry, attending important events together when needed. Charles admired Diana's devotion to their sons and respected her work with charities. Then, tragedy struck in 1997. Diana died in a car accident in Paris. The news shocked the world. People wept in the streets. They laid flowers outside Buckingham Palace. The grief was overwhelming. For Charles, it was a deeply painful time. He traveled to Paris to bring Diana's body back to England. He put aside his differences with her to honor her memory. Charles's main focus after Diana's death was supporting William and Harry. They were just 15 and 12 years old. Charles knew they needed him more than ever. He stayed close to them, comforting them and guiding them through their grief. He also worked to keep Diana's legacy alive, supporting the causes she had cared about. Despite his personal struggles, Charles continued his public work. He spoke out about the environment, a topic he was passionate about. He warned about climate change and the need to protect the planet. He also promoted sustainable farming and renewable energy. Some people still criticized his ideas, calling him too outspoken, but others began to listen. The 1990s also brought moments of change for Charles. He began to rebuild his relationship with the public. People started to see him in a new light. They admired his dedication to his sons and his commitment to his work. Slowly, the criticism softened. Charles's relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles also changed during this time. They remained close despite the public's reaction. In the late 1990s, Charles began to introduce Camilla to more of his friends and family. It was clear she was an important part of his life. While some people disapproved, others started to accept their relationship. By the end of the 1990s, Charles had faced some of the hardest moments of his life, but he had also grown stronger. He had learned how to handle criticism and focus on what truly mattered. He had stayed committed to his role as a prince, a father, and a leader. Chapter 8. A Passion for Charity. Helping people with heart and vision. Charles has always believed in the power of helping others. As a young man, he saw people struggling. Young people without jobs, families without hope, communities that felt forgotten. He didn't just want to talk about these problems. He wanted to do something. He wanted to make a difference. In 1976, Charles took a bold step. He used his own money, just $7,500 from his Navy severance pay, to create something new. It was called the Prince's Trust. At the time, it was a small idea with a big goal, to give young people the chance to succeed. Charles believed that with a little help, anyone could achieve great things. The Prince's Trust started by supporting small projects. Charles worked closely with young people to understand their needs. Some needed training to find a job. Others wanted to start their own businesses. Many just needed someone to believe in them. Charles listened carefully. He didn't want to just hand out money. He wanted to create opportunities. One of the Trust's first projects was helping young people start community gardens. Charles loved this idea. It brought people together, taught valuable skills, and created something beautiful. He visited the gardens, talking to the young workers and hearing their stories. "You've done something incredible here," he would say, encouraging them to keep going. Over time, the Prince's Trust grew. It began to offer more programs, helping young people in many different ways. There were courses to teach business skills, workshops to build confidence, and even grants to start new careers. Charles often visited these programs. He would sit down with young people, asking about their dreams and challenges. His kindness and genuine interest inspired them. One young man, Ahmed, shared his story. He had dropped out of school and felt lost, but with the Trust's help, he started his own small business, fixing bikes. Charles visited Ahmed's workshop and saw the pride in his eyes. "You've created something amazing," Charles told him. Moments like this gave Charles a deep sense of purpose. The Trust also helped young artists, musicians, and performers. Charles believed in the power of creativity. He felt that art could change lives. One of the Trust's success stories was a young singer named Adele. Before she became famous, the Trust supported her dream of making music. Years later, Adele publicly thanked Charles and the Trust for their support. Stories like hers proved that small acts of kindness could lead to great achievements. Charles didn't just work in the United Kingdom. He wanted to help people all over the world. Through his charities, he supported education programs in Africa, health initiatives in India, and conservation projects in South America. His vision was global. He believed that every life mattered, no matter where someone was born. One of Charles's favorite projects was helping young people in rural areas. He knew that life in the countryside could be tough. Jobs were scarce, and opportunities were limited. The Prince's Countryside Fund was created to support farmers, rural communities, and small businesses. Charles felt a deep connection to the land, and he wanted to share that love with others. In his speeches, Charles often spoke about the importance of giving back. "We all have something to offer," he said. "Whether it's time, skills, or resources, we can all make a difference." He believed that helping others wasn't just a duty, it was a privilege. Charles's work wasn't always easy. Some people criticized him, saying he should focus on being a prince, not a philanthropist. Others doubted his ideas, thinking they were too ambitious. But Charles didn't let the criticism stop him. He stayed committed to his vision. He believed in the people he was helping, and that belief gave him strength. Over the years, the Prince's Trust helped thousands of young people. Many of them wrote letters to Charles, thanking him for changing their lives. These letters touched his heart. Some shared stories of overcoming homelessness. Others spoke about finding their first jobs or starting families. Charles kept many of these letters, reading them whenever he needed inspiration. Charles's passion for charity extended beyond the Prince's Trust. He supported causes related to health, education, and the environment. He was especially passionate about sustainable living. Through his work, he showed that caring for the planet and caring for people went hand in hand. In 2010, the Prince's Trust celebrated its 35th anniversary. A special event was held to honor the Trust's achievements. Charles spoke with pride about the young people who had been helped. "This is their success," he said, "and I am deeply honored to have been part of their journey." One of the most emotional moments of the event came when a young woman named Sarah took the stage. She had faced many challenges growing up, including poverty and family struggles. But with the Trust's support, she had started her own bakery. Standing before the audience, Sarah thanked Charles for believing in her. Tears filled Charles's eyes as he hugged her. It was a reminder of why he had started the Trust all those years ago. Today, the Prince's Trust is one of the most successful charities in the world. It has helped over 1 million young people find hope, purpose, and success. Charles's dream of making a difference has become a reality. His work has shown that even small beginnings can lead to great change. As this chapter ends, we see Charles visiting a new project. He stands in a workshop surrounded by young people learning skills for their future. He listens to their stories, offers advice, and encourages them to keep going. His face is full of warmth and pride. "Helping others is the greatest reward," Charles says softly. His passion for charity has touched countless lives. His vision and heart continue to inspire, proving that one person can truly make a difference. Chapter 9. Waiting for the Crown. Decades of waiting and preparing. Charles was just 3 years old when his mother became queen. It was 1952. As the heir to the throne, his destiny was clear. One day, he would become king. But what no one could predict was how long he would have to wait. Decades passed, and Charles remained the Prince of Wales, always preparing for the day his time would come. For Charles, being the heir was both a privilege and a challenge. He grew up knowing his role was special. His mother, Queen Elizabeth II, was deeply dedicated to her duties. She showed Charles what it meant to lead with grace and commitment. He admired her greatly, but he also felt the weight of following in her footsteps. As the years went by, Charles's role became more defined. He attended state events, represented the royal family, and built connections with people around the world. He was a constant presence at his mother's side, watching and learning. But he also had ideas of his own. Charles wanted to bring change to the monarchy, making it more modern and connected to the people. He knew this would not be easy. One of the hardest parts of waiting was the uncertainty. Charles didn't know when he would become king. His mother's reign was long and strong. She was loved and respected by millions. Charles felt both pride and frustration. He wanted to honor her legacy, but he also wanted to prove himself. He often asked himself, "Will I be ready when the time comes?" In his younger years, Charles sometimes felt overshadowed by his mother. Queen Elizabeth was a symbol of stability, and the public adored her. By comparison, Charles's actions were often criticized. People questioned his choices and doubted his ability to lead. This criticism hurt him deeply. But instead of giving up, Charles worked harder. He wanted to show that he could be a thoughtful and capable leader. Over the decades, Charles focused on preparing for his future role. He read extensively about history, politics, and world affairs. He surrounded himself with advisors who could guide him. He spent time understanding the challenges facing his country, from social inequality to environmental issues. He believed that a modern monarch needed to address real problems, not just attend ceremonies. Charles's vision for the monarchy was clear. He wanted it to be more relevant to the people. He spoke about the importance of diversity, inclusion, and sustainability. He believed the royal family should lead by example, showing care for the planet and its people. These ideas were not always popular, but Charles remained firm in his beliefs. He knew that change often takes time. Despite his dedication, waiting was not easy for Charles. As the years turned into decades, he faced moments of doubt. He wondered if he would ever have the chance to lead. He also faced public criticism. Some people questioned the need for a monarchy in modern times. Others compared him unfavorably to his mother. These opinions weighed heavily on him. But through it all, Charles found strength in his work. His charitable efforts, especially through the Prince's Trust, brought him a sense of purpose. Helping young people succeed reminded him of the positive impact he could have. He also found comfort in his family. His sons, William and Harry, gave him hope for the future. He wanted to set an example for them, showing that leadership is about service, not power. Charles's personal life also influenced his journey as heir. His marriage to Diana had ended in heartbreak, and her tragic death left a lasting impact. Charles knew the public still mourned her. He worked hard to support William and Harry through their grief while continuing his royal duties. He also found new happiness with Camilla Parker Bowles. Their relationship, though controversial at first, brought stability and love into his life. As Charles grew older, he began to think more deeply about his legacy. He knew that his time as king would likely be shorter than his mother's. This made him even more determined to make a difference. He wanted to use his role to address urgent issues like climate change and social inequality. He often said, "We must act now to protect the future." Throughout his years as heir, Charles faced many challenges. Public opinion about him fluctuated. The media often portrayed him as out of touch or overly opinionated. But Charles stayed true to himself. He believed that honesty and authenticity were more important than popularity. One of the most emotional moments of Charles's journey came in 2002. That year marked Queen Elizabeth's Golden Jubilee, celebrating 50 years on the throne. It was a time of joy and reflection. Charles watched with pride as millions of people celebrated his mother's reign. He felt grateful for her guidance and inspired by her dedication. But he also felt the passage of time. He knew his own moment would come someday. As the years went on, Charles began to take on more responsibilities. He often stood in for his mother at events, representing her when she was unable to attend. This gave him valuable experience and allowed the public to see him in a leadership role. Slowly, opinions about Charles began to shift. People started to appreciate his commitment and his vision. One of the most touching moments came during Queen Elizabeth's Platinum Jubilee in 2022. Charles delivered a heartfelt speech honoring his mother's 70 years of service. His words were full of love and admiration. He also spoke about the future, promising to continue her legacy. The speech showed the world that Charles was ready to lead. By the time Queen Elizabeth passed away in 2022, Charles had spent over 70 years preparing to be king. It was the longest wait in British history. But Charles's patience, dedication, and resilience had prepared him well. When the moment finally came, he was ready. Chapter 10. The Passing of the Torch. Goodbye to a beloved queen, and hello to a new king. It was a day the nation had feared, but knew would one day come. On September 8, 2022, Queen Elizabeth II passed away at Balmoral Castle in Scotland. She was 96 years old and had reigned for 70 years. Her death marked the end of an era. For Charles, it was a moment of deep sadness and profound change. The mother he loved and admired was gone. And now, his long wait was over. He was king. The news of the Queen's passing spread quickly. People across the world mourned her loss. Flowers filled the gates of Buckingham Palace. Messages of love and respect poured in from every corner of the globe. Elizabeth had been more than a queen. She was a symbol of stability, dedication, and grace. For many, it felt like losing a family member. For Charles, the loss was personal. Elizabeth had not only been his mother, but also his guide. She had taught him how to lead with humility and kindness. In private moments, he had often sought her advice. Now, she was gone, and Charles had to step into her place. He felt the weight of the crown more than ever. The days following the Queen's death were filled with sorrow and ceremony. Charles immediately traveled to London. As he stepped out of his car at Buckingham Palace, the crowd erupted in applause. It was a show of support, a sign that the people were ready to welcome their new king. Charles looked moved. He shook hands with those who had gathered, offering words of gratitude and comfort. The first official act of Charles's reign was his proclamation as king. This ceremony, steeped in tradition, formally declared him as the new monarch. Charles stood before a group of senior officials dressed in a black suit. His face was serious, but his voice was strong. "I am deeply aware of this great inheritance," he said, "and of the duties and responsibilities it brings." The proclamation was both a solemn moment and a celebration of continuity. It reminded the nation that even in times of loss, the monarchy endured. Charles's words reassured the people. He promised to serve with the same dedication his mother had shown. One of Charles's most important moments came during his first address to the nation. Sitting at a desk, surrounded by family photos, he spoke directly to the people. His voice was calm, but full of emotion. He honored his mother, calling her an inspiration and example to me and to all my family. He also pledged to uphold the values of the monarchy. As the Queen herself did with such unswerving devotion, he said, "I too now solemnly pledge myself to uphold the constitutional principles at the heart of our nation." This speech touched many hearts. It showed Charles's deep respect for his mother and his readiness to embrace his role. For the first time, the nation saw him not just as a prince, but as a king. Charles's new role came with immense responsibility. As king, he became the head of state for the United Kingdom and 14 other Commonwealth countries. He also became the symbolic leader of millions around the world. It was a demanding job, but Charles had been preparing for it his entire life. One of his first tasks was to lead the nation in mourning. He traveled to Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, meeting people and attending memorial services. At each stop, Charles listened to stories about his mother. He thanked people for their kindness and support. His presence brought comfort to many. It showed that, even in grief, the monarchy remained strong. The state funeral for Queen Elizabeth was one of the largest in history. World leaders, royalty, and ordinary citizens came together to honor her. The service at Westminster Abbey was solemn and beautiful. As the Queen's coffin was carried through the streets of London, thousands lined the route to say goodbye. Charles walked behind the coffin, his face etched with grief. It was a final farewell to the woman who had shaped his life. After the funeral, Charles's focus shifted to the future. He wanted to honor his mother's legacy while also making his own mark as king. One of his goals was to modernize the monarchy. Charles believed the royal family needed to adapt to the times. He wanted to make it smaller, more efficient, and more connected to the people. Charles also remained committed to the causes he cared about. As king, he continued to speak about climate change, sustainable living, and helping young people. He used his platform to encourage action and inspire hope. Although some criticized him for being too outspoken, many admired his dedication. Becoming king also brought challenges. Charles had to navigate a world that had changed significantly during his mother's reign. Social media, political divisions, and global crises made the job of a monarch more complex than ever. But Charles faced these challenges with determination. He drew on his years of experience and his deep belief in service. For Charles, one of the most rewarding parts of his new role was connecting with people. Whether visiting schools, meeting community leaders, or attending state events, he made an effort to listen and engage. He wanted people to feel that the monarchy was there for them, not above them. Charles's family also played an important role during this time. His wife, Camilla, became queen consort, supporting him in his duties. His sons, William and Harry, were by his side, each contributing in their own way. Although the royal family had faced its share of challenges, Charles was determined to keep them united. As the months passed, Charles settled into his new role. He began planning his coronation, a historic event that would formally mark the start of his reign. But more than ceremonies or titles, Charles focused on the work ahead. He saw his role as an opportunity to serve, to lead, and to make a difference. Looking back, Charles often spoke about the importance of patience. His decades of waiting had taught him the value of preparation and perseverance. He understood that leadership was not about power, but about responsibility. His mother's example had shown him the way, and now it was his turn to lead. Chapter 11. A Modern King. Tradition meets change in a new era. Charles's journey as king began with both honor and responsibility. For decades, he had watched his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, lead with strength and grace. Now, it was his turn. But Charles was determined to be his own kind of monarch. He respected the traditions of the monarchy, but he also believed in change. The world was different now, and he wanted to bring the royal family closer to the people. One of Charles's first goals as king was to focus on sustainability. For years, he had spoken about protecting the planet. Now, as king, he had an even louder voice. He wanted to show that the monarchy could lead by example. At Buckingham Palace and other royal residences, Charles introduced new eco-friendly practices. Solar panels were installed, gardens were planted with flowers that supported bees and other wildlife. He even encouraged the royal kitchens to reduce waste and use organic ingredients. Charles's commitment to the environment extended beyond the palace walls. In speeches, he continued to warn about climate change. he urged governments and businesses to act quickly. "This is not just a problem for the future," he said. "It is a problem for now." Many people admired his passion. They saw a king who cared deeply about the world and its people. Another important part of Charles's vision was diversity. He believed the royal family should reflect the modern world. As king, he made an effort to connect with people from all backgrounds. He visited communities across the United Kingdom, listening to their stories and learning about their cultures. He also worked to strengthen the Commonwealth, a group of 56 countries that shared historical ties with Britain. Charles wanted the Commonwealth to remain united, built on mutual respect and shared goals. One of Charles's most significant steps as king was simplifying the monarchy. He believed the royal family should be smaller and more focused. This idea, often called a slimmed-down monarchy, meant fewer working royals and less public expense. Charles wanted to ensure that the royal family remained relevant and efficient in modern times. Despite these changes, Charles also understood the importance of tradition. He knew that ceremonies and rituals were a big part of the monarchy's appeal. His own coronation reflected this balance. The event was steeped in history, with ancient prayers and symbolic acts, but it also included modern touches like music from diverse cultures and representatives from many faiths. Charles wanted the coronation to honor the past while embracing the present. As king, Charles made it a priority to connect with the younger generation. He believed they held the key to the future. Through the prince's trust, which he had founded decades earlier, he continued to support young people. The charity helped them start businesses